Welcome to Senior Connection. I'm Nan Rafter.
And I'm Danielle Hopkins.
And we're your co-hosts.
We're co-hosts again.
Yes, yeah. So Danielle, I brought one of my friends today. We've had a lot of your friends.
We've had a lot of my friends.
But I know that Joe's becoming your friend too.
He
so
is.
I will share him.
Okay, I appreciate it.
And I'm going to share him with all of our viewers.
I love that.
I do. Hi, Joe Landry.
Good morning.
We have whatever it is, right? We have Joe Landry with us today, and he is our town historian and has taught so many of us, especially myself, who has lived here all my life, about so much. I learn something from you, Joe, every time you're here. So you haven't been here for a while, so I'm glad that you're back with us, and you've got some great stuff to show us today.
Yeah.
All right. So what are you gonna teach us?
We have to bring Danielle up to speed because how long have you been in Franklin now?
Well, I grew up in Franklin.
Oh, you did? Oh,
I
okay.
did grow up in Franklin. My mom actually grew up in Franklin too.
Okay.
But you've been coming to the senior center doing presentations, and I haven't been able to come and listen. So I'm excited to learn and
Yeah.
The thing is,
know a little bit of history.
some of the pictures I'm going to show you probably haven't seen.
Probably not.
They'll be of interest to you too. But
Yeah.
Nan and I remember because we've been around a few more
We've been
years.
around for a while, Joe.
I know.
Yeah. We won't say how long.
No.
All right.
So anyways,
So,
go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I was going to say the first picture we'll show is this is where Franklin Furniture used to be. And Franklin Furniture was on East Central Street, and it was right near the building on the right is right on the corner of Alpine Row. And they tore it down some years ago, and they built a big apartment complex there. But that's what it looked like. The building on the right was built around 1890, and then 1891 is when the big brick building was built.
Mm-hmm.
And then over the years, Franklin Furniture was there. Freddie Saltman ran that, and everybody remembers Franklin Furniture.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Here's that one.
And now they have the Japanese restaurant there downstairs.
Correct,
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Looks a little different.
Well, a lot different.
Yeah.
And then a little bit to the left of that was this little building. It originally was a meat market. And believe it or not, now the strange thing about this building, apparently it was a gas house, whatever a gas house was used for, and it was moved there probably around 1870. And they turned it into a little meat market. And then over the years it became a grocery store. Charlie Quinn ran it for a while until the 50s, and then Jimmy O'Connell took it over. And then eventually the Woonsocket Call had a branch office there. And a lot of people remember Dutchy Gilbert.
I remember that, yeah.
The newspaper carriers would go there and get their newspapers.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually it became Fico Shoe Store. This picture was taken from the 1978 parade. And now it was torn down, and that's what the apartment complex is today.
So that would have been right next door to Franklin Furniture.
That's correct. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Yep, I do remember that.
I find it funny that there's all those people on the roof watching the parade.
Oh,
Yeah.
the place was the town was mobbed that day. That
Yeah.
was a huge parade.
Wow.
It was 1978, which was the 200th anniversary of the town. 2 years before was the 200th anniversary of the country. But Franklin was incorporated in 1778,
Yeah.
so that's why that big parade. And it was really hot that day, from what I remember. And people were up on the top of the buildings and everything. And
That's pretty
the
good.
parade route was just jammed. It was a huge parade.
It is a big parade, yeah.
Now, this picture I got a hold of some time ago, and it was obviously before, it was around 1900 or so, because you can see the streetcar tracks in the road. That's how you can kind of date these pictures. The streetcar tracks came around 1900, and so this is a little bit after 1900. The arrow's pointing to a building that was just to the left of the meat market building. There was a furniture store in there for a while, and then that was torn down to make way for the Sentinel building, which I'll show you next.
Okay, yeah.
The building on the left is what we call the Sentinel building, because that's where the Franklin Sentinel was published. And John Rizzoli had a pharmacy in there. We probably remember that.
I know, Lime Ricky's.
Oh, yes. Yep.
Yes.
That's
And
right.
Rita.
That's right, Rita Hines.
Rita
was it?
Hines.
Yeah, right.
Yes, yes. I used to go in there quite frequently.
Yeah, I've got a picture somewhere of Rita Hines behind the counter.
Yes.
Yeah. In fact, I think that's probably Dutchy Gilbert standing in the corner, in the doorway there. When this picture was taken, that's when the Woonsocket Call office was there. So, yeah. And to the left of that was a building that's still there to this day. That's the A.J. Cataldo block. And that was built around 1923. Amadeo Joseph Cataldo was the gentleman that owned that. There used to be a laundry building in there. It was called Waterman Laundry. Some of the older pictures of Franklin, you'll see Waterman's Laundry. And there was another building called the Spears Building. William Spears owned that block, and in fact, Mr. Cataldo bought the block from Mr. Spears. And then in 1923, he tore those buildings down to build this block. And then other businesses that were in there. There was the Scott Shoe Store was there for a while. The Cataldo hardware store was there.
I remember that.
There was offices up in the second floor. Some doctors and dentists had their offices up there. I remember Walter Travis had his studio up there at one time.
Photography?
Yeah, he did the photography for my wedding.
Oh.
In fact, one of his favorite things, he did this apparently at every wedding. Just before there was time to cut the cake, he would position us, the bride and the groom, by the cake, and he would he'd put the knife in both the bride and the groom's hand. But before that, he would say, "Joe," he'd hold my hand up like this, and he'd step back. He'd take the picture, and he goes, "Okay, Joe, that's the last time you'll ever have the upper hand."
That's
And
funny.
he did that. I was talking to different people, and he says he did that with everybody's wedding.
Did he?
so,
Yeah. Oh, Walter Travis. Yes, I remember
Quite a
him.
thing, yeah.
So he was there
Yeah.
in that building. Yeah.
And then I think it was a Dr. Vina was a dentist. I
Dr.
think.
Vina was there. Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
And that was that building. And then we all remember Jimmy's.
Oh, so fondly.
And I've got the cavities to prove it.
Oh, me too. Yes.
You could walk in the front door, just turn around by where the window was, and there was all the penny candy.
There it was.
You get the little brown bag.
The
and
little
you start,
bag.
You start putting the candy in, bazooka bubble gum.
Oh, I was me. It was the
you know,
mint
things
juleps.
Mint juleps,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
they're like little green square candies.
Oh, those were good.
Some people like the straws with the sugar in it. And,
Yes. Oh, no. And I used to be wanting to be a nurse. I liked the strips that had the little dots on them, the little candy dots, and I'd play with those. Were my pills.
Those are your pills.
My jagged little pills.
I'll take the blue one today, the pink one. Yeah.
The problem is sometimes the paper would stick to the
It
the
would.
thing. So,
But I would fill that bag, and it cost me hardly anything. You know, for 25 cents, I had a bag full of candy.
that's right.
Yes.
Yeah, and then you go over and Jimmy would look in the bag. Okay, 25 cents, whatever.
Right. Yeah. But he also had a soda fountain
That's
over
right.
there, and he had good ice cream.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's why they call it Jimmy's Ice Cream.
Jimmy's ice cream.
But that
yeah,
was
because-
originally the Cataldo fruit stand. It was called the Ideal Fruit Stand. And that was incorporated in 1888. And then in future years, Jimmy took it over. And his daughter was of quite prominence in Franklin, Stella Gian.
Stella, who had this
That's right.
TV
She sat in
show.
that seat right there.
Yes, she's.
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah. And then next to it was like a little restaurant. It was called the Red Lunch, I think it was. And then later years, Jimmy took it over and had a little liquor store in there.
That was on the side. Yeah, we couldn't go in
Right.
there.
That's right.
Right. Yeah. They were.
We couldn't go in there.
And I couldn't go in. And so both those buildings are gone now. They just squeezed them in on the little triangular plot of land right there next to the Cataldo block. So, but they're gone now.
Oh, but they're great memories. The memories are still with us, Joe.
That's right.
Yep. So
Yeah.
you did.
See what you missed,
I'm
Danielle?
so
you missed that.
sorry.
Yeah.
Now, when you cross the bridge, you came to this building.
My favorite place.
Oh, really? Really? Martin's Department Store.
Yes.
Now, do you know if Martin was his first name or his last name?
See, I don't know.
You don't know?
I called him Mr. Martin, but that's
Right.
because I was very polite.
That was his first name, believe it or not.
Really?
Yep. His last name was Levine. Martin Levine.
Okay.
Martin Levine.
Martin Levine. And his wife?
Mrs. Levine.
Mrs. Levine. I don't know what her name was.
I'm not sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Martine.
Martin.
Oh, maybe. Maybe.
I got my first pair of high heels there.
Did you?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Wow. Now, this building dates back to the 1860s and even before.
Wow.
Because I've got some old pictures of Franklin that show that building. And so I know it goes back to those years. And then over the years, it was added on to, there was just a porch in the front, but then in the 1930s, actually the 1940s, they added the front extension, and Martin's moved there. Actually, Martin's moved there in 1944. He used to be down where the Newberry's was. I'll show you that in a second.
Oh.
And he used to be down there, but then in 1944 there was a fire in that block, and he moved to here.
Oh.
So I'll explain that more in a minute.
Huh.
So yeah.
And that's where the Berry Insurance Company parking lot is,
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, Fico Shoe Store actually started in there. And then in 1953 they moved down to Depot Street.
Oh, I see. Huh. I used to go. I don't know how he could find anything in there. He had so much in there. It was overwhelming. And I would go in there and buy my grandmother her fabulous, famous dainty dot nylons.
Oh.
He had them in there, and they would come in a black box with pink tissue paper.
Very
And I'm
fancy.
thinking, and my grandmother, she loved these nylons, and I would go in and I'd say, I would like a pair of dainty dot nylons. Dainty dot nylons, yes. And he'd ask me what color, and I would tell him black, and he would get them for me in her size, and it was just delightful. He put his hand in to show me that they were sheer. It was lovely.
Wow.
Yes, that was quite the place. And like I said, I got my first pair of high heels there.
Wow.
And I even got a little pair of shoes called the kitten heels, the little ones.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Now in 1962 they tore this building down because there was another building on Depot Street that they also tore down. It was where the trading post used to be. That was actually the first Sentinel building. And what they did, they tore this one down because they wanted to make more parking space because W.T. Grant, Newberry's was going to move into where W.T. Grant was and really expand their store. So they tore this building down, and Martin's moved over to the Morse block on East Central Street, where the theater was, on that block.
Oh, yes.
What I remember about that, I had just joined the high school band.
Yes.
We were in the band together, by the way. She played the clarinet, and I played the trombone.
All right, there
Yes.
you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Joe was good. I wasn't.
I was in the high school choir.
Oh, were you?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just a different year.
We didn't really have many in the choir. We had a choir, though, didn't we?
We did have a choir.
There weren't too many
No.
men in it, yeah.
No.
So what happened was, when I was a freshman in high school when I joined the band, and the uniform at that time was they had these blue coats, and you had to wear white pants. And the only place in town to buy the white pants was Martin's. So I remember going to Martin's when it was over on East Central Street.
Yeah.
And they had just moved there.
Yeah.
So that's what I remember about them being over there.
Yes. You might have seen me there because I went across the street to get the dainty dot nylons.
See?
Yep.
Our paths must have crossed. Wow.
Oh.
And then, so that was that building. And then here's
remember that.
Newberry's.
Yeah.
A lot of people really love this picture. It was, got a lot of positive comments on Facebook. It's about 1959, 1960. I always look at the cars. It kind of gives you an idea of roughly when the vintage was. And that's what I think it was about 58 or 59 Oldsmobile, I think, coming up the street. In fact, one person commented that they thought that was their parents' car coming out of Depot Street.
Oh, the blue one?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh.
Yeah. But you can see W.T. Grant just to the right. That's where they were. In fact, a lot of people remember when you were walking on the sidewalk in front of W.T. Grant, you would walk across these metal doors that were in the sidewalk.
Yes.
Do you remember that?
I do.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was like an elevator, and the elevator would come up, and there was like a hoop on the top of the elevator, and that would push the doors open, and the elevator would come up to street level. You know, put the things on it, and then it would go back down and then into the basement of the store.
Because I was always afraid I was going to fall in. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So had Newberry's, had they expanded at this point? Was that?
Not here.
No.
Well, I should say they did. When that building was built, Depot Plaza was really 3 separate buildings built at different times. And where you see Newberry's, on the far left of the building is where Martin's was. That building was originally built with 9 small stores. And if you look at the building, if you look at the Newberry building, you see those design things on the roof
Yes.
of the facade. Each one of those, you see 5 of them, right? Each one of those was where the front door of each of those small stores was.
Oh.
And Newberry's originally started in 1925 in that spot. They actually took up the first 2 on the far right. and that's where Newberry's originally was. And there were 3 small stores to the left of it. In the 1940s, early 40s, Martin's took up the 2 stores that were on the left, and that's where Martin's was until that big fire of 1944, where the block was heavily damaged. They repaired it. But at that point, Martin's moved over to the Exchange building. But that's where Martin's was
I see.
in the 30s and
Yeah.
into the 40s.
Yeah. I know. I was admiring that facade. Isn't that something?
Yeah, a lot that facade's really gone now. And then a little history on that. That was 1925 that block was built.
Yep. Lots of great memories.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I love it when Joe comes because I go back to my childhood.
You won't go back to this childhood.
No. No, I don't go back that far.
This is exact. Those 2 houses. Neither do I. So these 2 houses on the right, that's where Newberry's was.
Okay.
This is that exact spot. The same.
And this was what year?
This. Okay.
I can't see.
Now the tracks are there, so it's 1900. But as I look down the street, I see the Hotel Windsor, which was torn down in 1907. So this picture was between 1900 and 1907.
Okay. And Hotel Windsor is where?
That today the Felix J. Cataldo block is there. The Franklin School for the Performing Arts.
Yes.
In that building.
Yep.
Well, that was those. We're going to see those in a few seconds.
Okay.
But the Hotel Windsor was there, along with its 2 small buildings just to the left of it. Those were torn down in 1907 to build the Felix J. Cataldo block.
Was it still considered downtown if there were houses and stuff right there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was. Yep. The house of those 2 houses, the house on the left, that's where Depot Plaza. That's where the Newberry's store was. That was torn. Like I said, that was torn down in 1925. The house next to it was torn down to make way for that W.T. Grant building in the middle.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Now Now this is 1946. This was the very day that Newberry's reopened after the fire. That's where all the cars were, and you can see a lot of people waiting in line to get into the newly expanded J.J. Newberry's.
Oh.
By the way, what does J.J. stand for?
I don't know.
John Josiah Newberry.
John Josiah.
John Josiah Newberry.
Okay.
What does W.T. stand for? W.T. Grant.
Don't know.
William Thomas Grant.
Okay.
There you go.
There you go. Trivia.
There. But you can see the first
Yep.
National Food
Yeah.
store there too, and the W.T. Grant store. Now, one thing about the fire that happened in 1944, the fire was contained to the block where Newberry's is. W.T. Grant suffered smoke and water damage, so they were able to, believe it or not, salvage some of their goods. They even had a fire sale.
Oh.
Because there was a natural firewall. There were 2 separate buildings, so it kind of protected them from the fire.
I see.
Yeah.
Do we know what started the fire?
Not
No.
really sure.
No.
No. There's so many fires. In fact, there was
Have a lot of
about 3 or
fires.
4 fires in that block over the years. There was one in 1925, shortly after the place was built. All these little fires. The Metcalf block had fires in the cellar. I mean, fires were everywhere. Yeah.
I like that picture.
Now we look down Depot Street, and you can see on the right, the building at the end. That was the other Sentinel building we talk about. And of course, we remember Vera and Bud Ledbery had the trading post in there.
Yes.
You could bring different things. They'd sell it on consignment, antiques and things.
Yeah, it was like a first consignment shop. Yeah.
That's right.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was where the Sentinel was. You can see the building on the right. That's the Depot Street side of the Newberry block, that block. And you can see the individual stores. You can see like the White Star Cafe was doing business down there at the end at that time.
That was quite the place.
It was.
Yeah.
In 1944, after the fire, they moved up towards Main Street, and they were there until probably the early 50s when they moved over to West Central Street in the Black Box, where the Black Box is today.
Yep.
And then they became the Shamrock after that.
Yep.
Yeah. So that was that. And that's Depot Street.
Looks very different now.
A lot different now. That's right. Now, this is still the end of Depot Street.
There's the coal.
That's the coal elevator.
Oh, great!
Yeah,
I get to see
that's
it.
the coal. This is exactly what you would see in Scott Mason's diorama.
Oh, okay. So this was, what was the name of the coal company?
W.K. Gilmore.
Gilmore.
Yeah, he actually took it over in around 1914 from one of the Ray brothers.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. What would happen? See the coal car on the track to the right? The coal cars had doors underneath, and there was like a pit underneath the tracks, and they would dump the coal into that pit, and there was a conveyor where that chute is going down, and the coal would go up into the elevator, and then the trucks would drive underneath the building. It was up on stilts, and they would dump the coal in the trucks, and off they would go to deliver the coal.
So this would be in the municipal parking area
Exactly.
near the train station.
That's exactly right.
Up from the train station.
That was all torn down to make way for that parking lot.
So that house that we see on the left
Yeah.
with the peaks,
Yeah.
that would be Dean Avenue,
That's
correct?
29 Dean Avenue. That's still there to this day.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Duke Yadasinio owned that when I was young, and he had the Vet Med Supply Company in
Oh,
there.
sure. Yep. Okay, so now I know where it is. I don't remember that at all, Joe.
Well, the building on the left, that was they sold grain in there. That was built in the early 1900s, and that building was there until in the 60s. I remember walking by there. Once in a while, Duke would have me go uptown and get some things, and I'd walk by that building. Newberry's actually used that for storage until they tore it down. But, yeah. Mhm.
I didn't frequent over there on that side of the tracks.
Oh, you didn't? No.
That side of the tracks.
Well, it was a good side. I was on that side.
It was a good side, right? Yeah.
Oh, and then if you just turn to the left, that's where there was a little hotel there. And that's where the 140 Club was there, and then the train stop was there eventually,
Yeah.
just to give you a feel. And then that building on the left, those two buildings actually, where the Oddfellows had their hall there.
Yes.
And so that's Depot Street there.
And it looks like it's on fire.
No,
Is that-
believe it or not, that fire was over on Main Street, but they had the truck over there pumping water over to Main Street.
Okay.
Yeah. That was around 1932, I think it was, when that was taken.
So that was a rooming house.
Like a rooming house, that's right. Yep. That was what it was built for, actually. I remember going up there. Ski Fienza had his bar in there for a while. He said, "You want to go upstairs?" Yeah. So I went up, and the place was abandoned at that time. We walked through the hallway and the little rooms and everything.
Yeah.
The beds were all unmade and mattresses and everything, but just give you an idea of what the
What it
place
was
was
like.
like.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
really something. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And then this is still Depot Street. We remember that. You can see those buildings down the end. That was the second Ray block right there. That was built in 1889. And Austin B. Chilson had a meat market in there, and that was Stanley Chilson's father. And he had that until the 50s. And then Fico Shoe Store moved in there.
That's where I got my high heels that I bought at Martin's dyed for the prom, right?
Right. Yeah. When you walked in that door, if you turned to the left, that was where Fico's was. If you went to the right, there was a little tailor shop in there. Disti DeCecco.
Disti DeCecco, yes. Yep.
Yeah. And then further down, right where that awning is, just to the right of it, when they tore down the Sentinel building, the trading post had to move to that spot. And then then eventually the trading post actually moved to underneath the cinema, underneath the theater.
I remember that.
Right.
Yep.
Yep. And then now we're on Main Street, and that's the Ray block, the first Ray block. And that was the first building in Franklin to get an elevator in around 1959. And we used to go up and down the elevator just because we could, as typical kids. It's like, oh, wow, this is
Joe,
cool.
you had a busy life over there on Dean Avenue.
I'm telling you, it's great. Yeah.
I didn't have any of that on Alpine Place.
I know it. That's what you missed. And now that clock, some people think, oh, well, whatever happened to that clock? Well, when they tore that block down in 1970, Bob Valley got a hold of it, and he took it, and he preserved it. He meticulously restored it. And today, he donated it back to the Dean Bank when they moved there, and today it's up on that pedestal right in
It
front.
is. Oh,
That's
yeah.
the very clock. Now, that clock actually chimed back in 1916 when they put it on that building. It was
Oh.
a typical Big Ben, bing, bing, ding, ding,
Yeah,
ding,
yeah.
ding, ding. Yeah, it was that one.
Oh.
It chimed. Yeah,
So Dean Bank is where that building. Yep.
correct.
Okay.
That's where Dean Bank is.
That's where Dean Bank
Now,
is.
Dean
now.
Bank actually started there in 1889. And then in the 50s, they moved over on the corner of Emmons Street. And then they moved back there in the 80s. So they kind of went back to where they were originally.
I see.
And Bob Valley actually started in that building.
Yeah.
And where do you think Valley Jewelers is? In the Dean Cooperative building
They
over
just
there.
switched places.
I know, so it's
Yeah.
kind of like a little...
I love it.
I know, it's
Yeah,
a
I
little
love
connection
it.
there, yeah.
Yep.
And then he donated the clock back to Dean Bank. So that was kind of nice.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, really nice story. Then Ed Faber owned that building for a while, and he had a hardware store on the far left. And then eventually Sherwin-Williams Paint moved in there, 1961, I think it was. So that's that. Oh, and then down below, you had the barber shops in there. Sully the barber was there.
Down, way down.
Right. You
Yep.
got that little extension on the side of the building.
Yep.
And that was really cool going to get a haircut from either Sully Jr. or Sully Sr. And one of the things, if you sat in Sully Jr.'s chair, anybody got a haircut remembers this. You had a mirror in the front and a mirror in the back, big mirrors.
Yeah.
And if you sat there, you had this hall of mirrors effect, where if you look in the mirror, and it's like infinity. So no matter if you turn you around facing the other way, you had the same effect. And anybody that sat in that chair remembers that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was kind of cool. Now, this is the corner of Dean Avenue. That building, that house, is where today's post office is.
Okay.
Now, I show this picture because in the 1880s or so, they built a barn or garage in the back of that property. And eventually that house was sold to Harry Haywood. And in around 1910, they wanted to build a YMCA for the town. But back in those days, the only way to get a building like that constructed was donations. So, in fact, I'll just show you. There's the YMCA. We think of it as the Masonic Hall, Excelsior Lodge.
Yeah.
Well, it originally was built as a YMCA.
I never knew that.
That's right. That's why I'm here.
That's why you're here. Right.
So,
Local historian.
see the part of the building to the far right? That was that garage. In 1910, they said we're gonna form a team of 100 people. 100 men are going to get together, and we're going to form 10 teams of 10 men. And they're going to have a contest. We're going to raise funds to build this building, and let's see which team can raise the most money. Their goal was to raise about $25,000-$30,000. Within a week, they met the goal.
Wow.
Yeah, within a week. All donations were coming in from all the rich families and everything, other places. And so they said, well, that building looks like a good building to start the YMCA. So they did. And then they built the big building to the left for a gymnasium, and the structure in the middle to connect it. Because you look at this building, it's like, who the heck would build a building like that? Look at the shape of it.
Right.
I mean, what architect would do that? I mean,
Right.
Why such a
It
strange
didn't
shape?
look like anything else in town. Yeah.
So that was the reason for that strange way of building
Okay.
it. It was,
So that would be behind the post office, correct?
Right.
Yeah. So it'd be Emmons Street and Dean Avenue.
Exactly.
Got it.
Now there's a big parking lot there because in around 2012, it burnt to the ground.
Right.
Right down. Carelessness
fire.
again,
Yeah.
big fire.
Oh, no.
Yeah, you could imagine my surprise. I was going to work one day. I was listening to WBZ Traffic on the Threes. And they said, avoid downtown Franklin. There's a big fire there. And the Traffic on the Threes is telling us of a big fire on Main Street in Franklin. What the heck could have burnt to cause that? And why are we even hearing about it? What burnt? And I couldn't think. Well, it turns out it was that building.
Yeah.
And the heat was so intense that the building where Dr. Mercer had his office, the siding, the aluminum siding had all melted on the side of the building. It was all drooping. The intense heat from the intense heat of that fire.
Wow.
Yeah. And what year was that?
About 2012, I think it was.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So it was. But anyway, that was the YMCA.
Yeah. Cool.
Yep. And then this is the Dean Avenue side of it. This is when it was the Masonic Temple. 1938, the YMCA they were running out of funds and things, so they disbanded the YMCA, and then the Masons needed a home, so they took it over.
Yep.
They named it Excelsior Lodge.
Excelsior Lodge.
Mm-hmm. Now, on Main Street, this is looking back towards the town bridge. To give you some perspective, Connie's Drugstore was in that the big red building, and you and I remember that. The big red building was the A.B. Fletcher block. That was built around in the 1890s. The two buildings that are in gray were the A.A. Fletcher block. You had the A.A. Fletcher block, the A.B. Fletcher block. I don't think there was an A.C. Fletcher block, but anyway.
And were they related?
Yes, they were father and son.
Oh.
A.A. Fletcher was Asa Austin Fletcher, and his son was Austin Barclay Fletcher.
Oh.
Now, this is really something. The two gray buildings, the building on the right, the gray building on the right, was the first one to be constructed around 1875. But it was constructed where the building on the left was. Then no sooner did they build it, they said, let's move the building over to the right, and we'll build the one on the left. And this is before before the brick building was built. Yeah.
Ha!
And then they built that one. Now the interesting thing about the big red building, there was a little cottage there. It was the Fletcher cottage. Before they built that building in 1890, they had to move that Fletcher cottage out of there. And that Fletcher cottage actually was built in South Franklin, and they moved it to there. And then they moved it out of there to build that block. But the interesting thing, that little Fletcher cottage, when it was in South Franklin, the article that I read said that it was the place where Oliver Dean was born. Now you can imagine my delight
Yes.
when I told Rob Lawson, the history professor at Dean, that, and he didn't know that. For me to tell him that, like, wow. And to this day, I love to remind him of that.
Yeah.
I saw him the other night over at the library, and
Yeah.
that was to me that was like, wow.
Yeah.
I taught the professor something about Dean. So anyway, they moved the Fletcher block out of there, and the cottage, and they built that building.
Wow.
And then the smaller building, that was torn down in 1949, 1950, and Benjamin Franklin Savings Bank built their building there.
Okay.
You remember that building?
Yeah, I do. Yep.
Yeah. And then the building on the left, the gray building, that's where Vargin's Market was,
Yep.
Helen's Fashions, and et cetera.
Yep.
And that was torn down. Well, it was torn down before the 78 parade. Because Benjamin Franklin Bank was still there, but there was an empty spot there, so it was down by 1978. And then eventually Rockland Trust tore that all down, and the Rockland Trust is there today. Rockland Trust was actually Benjamin Franklin Savings Bank till, I'm not sure what year they took them over, but Rockland Trust was there. See the red brick building? That's where Thunderbird Cleaners was.
Oh, Mr. Hooper.
Charlie Hooper.
Charlie Hooper.
Now that building was built in 1913. Originally, there was a wooden structure there, and I'll show that to you in a second. That was built by James Chilson. He was the uncle of Austin. The uncle of Austin Chilson and Stanley Chilson. It was a wooden building there, but in 1912, they decided they wanted to tear that down and build the brick building, and that's where A. Simon and Sons actually started. Then they had to move out of there because of that. Now here's that building, the Chilson Market, and you can see A.C. Dana to the right. A.C. Dana was a pharmacist. And then in the 1890s, he decided to build his own new block further down across from Depot Street.
Yeah.
And that was called the Dana Block, and it's still there to this day. And he'd moved his pharmacy over to there. And eventually Dana Pharmacy became Puritan Drugs.
Puritan Drug, right. Yeah.
And you'll see that in a minute, too. So this is where that brick building was. That building's where Thunderbird Cleaners was. The reason they did that, they wanted to move the post office into that location. And so they did. They moved the post office into the new brick building, and it was there until 1935 when they built the new post office. And then at that point, Thunderbird Cleaners moved. Oh, no, the Davis Department Store moved in after that. And then in the late 40s, that's when Thunderbird Cleaners took it over.
Wow.
So,
See, you're learning.
I am getting a history lesson.
This is
Oh,
good.
yeah.
Yeah.
now that's the Hotel Windsor that I talked about.
Oh, yes. Yep.
And you can see they're in the process of demolishing all that. So this is 1907. And you can see the Dana Block on the left. That's where Teddy Gallagher's is today.
Yep.
But anyway, they were tearing those down to put up the new Felix J. Cataldo block. And
Which is where the School of Performing Arts is.
exactly.
Right.
You can see that Chilson block to the right of it.
Yep.
So, and it's Puritan Drugs.
There's Puritan Drug.
Right. Back in the 70s, I think it was, they had a fire in the third floor of the building.
Oh, dear.
On the
Yeah.
fire, and they were able to salvage the building, but they didn't bother repairing the third floor. So today it's just a 2-story building. So.
Was the fire station still downtown with all these fires?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
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 Good place
Which
for
is a
them
good
to
place,
be, it
right?
sounds like.
Right.
Unbelievable,
Yeah.
yes. Unbelievable. And then behind this building was this little building. Herbert C.
Yes,
Stewart.
I remember that.
Remember Herb Stewart?
Yep.
Herb Stewart was noteworthy for one thing. 1905, he became the official bugler for the American Legion. And from that point on, for over 70 consecutive years, he played taps in the parades. The parades were really big on Memorial Day. They would start, and they would start. Sometimes they'd start at Dean College, and then they'd go down to Union Street Cemetery. The firing, they would do the firing squads, and then he'd play taps.
Yep.
Then they'd march over to St. Mary's Cemetery, do the same thing, and then they'd end up at the Common. For over 70 consecutive years, he marched in that parade.
Yeah.
He would actually shut down the shop and refuse business
And do it.
to make sure he did that.
Yeah, because he was very devoted to that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
He was a legend.
a legend,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I remember him.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And then in that alley is where the diner was.
Your diner.
Oh, the diner.
Your diner.
Oh,
That's
my
not,
diner.
that's not my diner. My diner was the other diner. Your diner.
That's right. Yeah.
I was on your side of the tracks.
That was no. Well, it was kind of like on the tracks. Yeah.
Now that lunch cart was this particular one. This is the one that was there until it was removed. That was the third one that was there. The first one was put there in 1899, and then in 1907, Charlie Lawrence, the owner at that time, decided to replace it with a newer one. In 1926, they replaced it with this one. And a good example of this, this diner was bought from the Worcester Lunch Cart Company. They made wonderful diners. There's still one up in I can't think of where it is.
Okay.
Anyway, we went to visit it.
Is it up near Worcester? No. Okay.
I can't believe it. I'll think of it.
It'll come back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's a good example of it, and we went to visit it, and it's like, wow, bringing back all great memories. So I worked there in high school.
But it wasn't like that. Was it like that then?
Similar. A lot
it-
of similarities. Had the same counters, same booths and things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was in Worcester. Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, on Broadway.
Optimo. What was that?
At that time, it was a tobacco store, I believe.
Ah.
But there was different stores in there. Actually, no, I'm sorry. There was a candy store in there when this picture was taken.
I didn't know
You know why this was taken? There was a fire.
No. Is that why all those people were standing around?
That's right. Yeah, because I've got another picture looking at it, and there was a fire in the basement. So
Yeah.
Another fire.
A lot of fires.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
Got
this
good
was,
pictures from it.
again, this is between 1900 and 1907. That was the Metcalf block. And so kind of a cool picture, all the trees and everything.
Yeah, it's a pretty picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then this is more contemporary. This is back in the late 40s. You can see the Sears Roebuck catalog store there. The only purpose of that store was when you ordered something online, it would be brought to that store, and you'd go and you pick up your order, usually in these bags, and say, okay, my order's in. Mary Hill used to work there.
Wait a minute. When you ordered online?
Well, on the telephone. The
I was like, wait a second.
the telephone line.
Means a little different things nowadays.
lot
On
of
the
different-
landline. You
That's
pick
right.
up the landline and you
That's
would
right.
rotary
The
dial.
original Amazon.
That's right. That's right.
You would rotary dial. And that's right. And it would come in there.
It would come in there.
Yeah. And it was Mr. Martello there too, Harry?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Did I have the wrong man? I might be wrong.
Well, you could be right. I just don't know.
Okay, I don't know. All right, but Mary Hill.
Mary Hill worked
Yeah,
there.
I remember Mary Hill. Yeah.
And further down, you can just see the Mighty Good pastry shop. That's where they were until they moved into Newberry
Across
store.
the street. Yeah.
You can see Dean Jewelers. Dean Jewelers was in there at that time.
Yeah.
And I don't believe Arbitron and Hardware was in there at that time. Eventually they were.
Yeah.
And there's another diner there, it looks like, too.
Oh, that's the same
That's
one.
the same
Oh, it's the same
diner.
one?
Yeah.
But this time it was called the B&B Diner.
It changed.
And one of the big trivia questions was, what did B&B stand for?
Yeah.
Buzzer and Bozo.
Buzzer and Bozo. Yeah.
Buzzer and Bozo.
Wow.
Everybody had nicknames in Franklin.
I was going to say.
Buzzer was
What
Buzzer.
was your nickname?
I don't want to mention it. But anyways, Buzzer was Carlton Buzzer Mason.
Buzzer Mason.
Buzzer Mason.
Yeah.
And Bozo was Elmer Bozo Fleming.
Fleming.
And they took over from Charlie Lawrence in 1938. And then they renamed it the B&B Diner.
Right. Right. So Teddy Gallagher's would be where the drug that says drugs.
Right.
That would be Teddy Gallagher's, and then Mr. Pizzini's store would be.
Right. Yeah. Victor took over with the store there. Actually, he owns the whole block.
Right.
But he took over that spot, and he added on where the diner was. They took that diner out sometime in the 80s, I think it was.
Okay.
For part of a redevelopment thing in Franklin.
Yeah.
And so he added on to expand his store.
Yep. I like the street lights. Look at the street lights.
Yeah.
And we have those in North Attleboro.
Those are cool.
Gives a nice.
Yeah.
That's about a 1950 Hudson just pulling out, so it's about early 50s. Yeah. Now this really dates way back. This is looking at This is where looking down Main Street. We're standing right on the bridge. You can see the horse trough. You can just see the horse trough right in the middle of the picture to give you an idea of.
Oh, I see it. Yeah.
So you can look, that's West Central Street.
So that's the bamboo house.
Exactly.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Those buildings were torn down to build that block. That was called the Flax Block, as I refer to it as. A guy named Leo Flax bought it and redeveloped. He tore all those down in 1925. 1925 was quite a year for downtown Franklin. Actually, the 1920s. I mean, that was the year that the Depot Plaza block was developed. This was developed then. 1928, the Morse Opera House block burnt down and replaced with that. The the A.J. Cataldo block was built in 1923. So
there's a lot of
the 1920s, there was a lot.
Yeah.
A lot going on. And you can see, let me see. You can see Burns Clothing. There's a sign on the far right, Burns Clothing. He was in where the hotel was. He had to temporarily move out of there when they tore it down to build the Felix Cataldo block. And actually everybody in those buildings had to get out of there. There was a woman that ran a small newspaper store called Smith's Newsstand. They had to move out temporarily. And then they moved back when the Felix Cataldo block was completed. But they were temporarily up on the second floor of the Metcalf block. There was a music hall up there. In fact, Simon moved up there temporarily until they finished the building across the street.
Wow.
Yeah.
A lot of moving.
I know it. But then when the building was completed, Burns moved back to the Cataldo block. And then in 1929, Mr. Burns sold his business to Louis Cataldo. And Louis Cataldo was a famous clothier in Franklin.
Yep.
So,
You said there was a music hall?
yeah, there was a music hall up in the second floor of the Metcalf block. And then in the 1920s, they converted it into offices. That's when if you went up to the top of the stairs and you could go to the left or the right and you'd walk down the hallway, there were different rooms.
There was like lawyers
Right.
and yeah, I remember that.
Nick
There was a dentist, I think, up there, wasn't there?
Oh, Nick Sosi had his barber shop up there.
Oh, wow, okay.
And I believe Gus Sosi had his chiropractic business up there too, I think.
Wow.
Yeah. But they had offices up there, so, yeah.
So again, that would be over near School of Performing Arts.
Nope, this is the Metcalf block now. This is,
Oh, down for, okay.
right. Well,
Yep.
The bamboo houses.
Yep.
right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Too far down.
yeah,
right.
right,
Because I
exactly.
was trying to think, music hall, wouldn't it be cool that it used to be a music hall and now it's the School of Performing Arts, but it's
know
too
it.
far down. Yeah.
Well, of course, they had the Morse Opera House block. Well, the Morse Opera House was, and that was a big hall.
Yeah.
And so that burned down.
That burned down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And then this is what it was replaced with.
Which looks familiar.
This looks familiar.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Remember that place?
I do.
8 o'clock coffee?
8 o'clock at the beans.
That's
oh
right.
my gosh, you grind your beans and oh my, it smells so good.
Market Basket still has an 8 o'clock coffee machine right there. Every time I walk by it, wow. It reminds me of A&P.
Oh,
Yeah.
Look at this boiled ham, 79 cents.
And what?
I wonder how much
This is on
eggs
West
were.
Central Street. You know where the White Hen Plaza is, just on West Central Street?
Yeah.
That's where this was.
okay.
This was actually built as a 40-car garage, if you can believe that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Wow.
But now, then in the 30s, they took it over as A&P. What does A&P stand for?
I was just about to ask.
Atlantic and Pacific.
The Great Atlantic and Pacific Tea Company. Yep.
I knew
There you
that.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they had plaid stamps. Now, they had plaid stamps. Some stores had top value stamps. And of course, when you went to the gas station, you had,
S&H.
yeah. What did S&H stand for?
I don't know that.
Shipping
Sperry-
and handling?
Sperry. Sperry and
Hutchinson.
Hutchinson.
Sperry and Hutchinson.
But yes, I got a lot of my furniture from well, not furniture, but like lamps and things when I got married from S&H Green
That's right.
Stamps.
They used to have a redemption store down in Woonsocket at
Yeah,
Park
that's
Square.
where we'd go, right? And
For-
I had tray tables and all kinds of things.
For many years, my wife and I had this round card table that we got from there.
Yeah.
We don't have it anymore now, but
Yeah.
for years we had that.
Oh,
yeah.
I had these great lamps that had eagles on them. I thought that was terrific. I thought it says self-service.
Yeah,
you see
this is what's interesting. It used to be that if you went to the grocery store back in the 40s and even into the 30s, rather, you went to the grocery store and you went to the counter and you'd tell the grocer, okay, I need a can of corn. He'd go over and get the can of corn. Okay, what else you need? A pound of butter. Okay, and he'd bring it back to you. Self-serve did not happen.
Oh.
But in the 30s, I should have mentioned this before when we were talking about the Exchange Building. George Peck in 1932 became part of the IGA franchise. IGA stood for the Independent Grocers Alliance. And that's when this new concept of going in and doing your own shopping became. And that's what that means. So this was a self-service, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because that was just starting to come into its own. In the 50s, Brunelli's decided to build a supermarket down there on East Central Street,
Right.
on the corner of Lewis
Lewis Street, right?
And then that was
Yeah.
another supermarket.
Yeah, but self-service.
Yeah, self-service. What a new concept.
Now we have self-checkout.
I don't. Yeah. Now
Yeah.
you have self-checkout.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
couldn't
mean-
imagine going in and being like, "Here's my list. Go
That's
ahead
right.
and grab it."
Well, hey,
Can I have a can of corn?
Yeah, I guess you can order it too online and just like
Yeah.
Peapod and stuff like that.
Not the lines that we had.
Yeah, not yet. Online.
Vargin's Grocery downtown had a little grocery store, and in the 50s, you could call up. You could get on your phone at home, call up Vargin's. I want to place an order. So probably it'll be usually Marion Rustino. She'd be over in the corner, have the phone cradled in her, and she'd be taking down your order on this little pad of paper. This is in the 50s.
Yeah.
And then you're all done, okay. Probably Henry Rustino, her husband, would go around and do the shopping. They would package it, and then it would go into the truck, free delivery, and it would be brought to your house. This is in the 50s. They had Peapod before Peapod was
See,
fashionable.
we're ahead of our time.
Unbelievable, huh?
Oh my gosh, I love
Yeah,
that.
that's right.
Self-service.
Self-service.
And the plaid stamps I had forgotten about. I didn't collect those.
Yeah, me neither.
No.
Yeah. There's Mazzone the tailor.
There's the tailor.
That
Yep.
was originally a shoe repair shop, but then in 1938 or so, Mazzone took it over.
Yep.
Today they tore that down.
Well, didn't it become Bulletin's?
No, that was on the other side. You'll
Other
see
side.
that.
Other side, okay.
That's this one.
Oh, okay.
This is where the Rome restaurant is today.
Oh, my diner.
That's right.
Brunelli's Diner.
Brunelli's Diner.
That's where Brunelli's Diner was, where my
Right.
dad worked.
Okay.
Yeah.
A little history on this block. You talk about the diner. That was in from left to right, the third building to the right. That was originally built as a grocery store, and then eventually it became a bowling alley. It was actually a long, long building.
Oh.
And then in the 1930s, they moved the Clark Square Diner from the building on the far left into that spot and became the Clark Square Diner. And then the Brunelli family bought it. And in 1948, they decided to really totally redo the whole place over. And they put a new front on it and everything, nice new booths, and it became Brunelli's Diner. And then in the 50s, a guy named Nunzio Bonina bought it, and it became Kami's restaurant. Kami was the sister of Gus Sosi, the chiropractor, and she married Anthony Bonina, Nunzio Bonina. They had a son, Anthony Bonina, and he became a chiropractor. And I'm pretty sure he took over Gus Sosi's practice down there at Four Corners, because you see Anthony Bonina, chiropractor,
Right.
and so Kami was Carmela, and that was who Kami's was named after. And then in 1965, the Kalachi family bought the restaurant, renamed it the Rome Restaurant.
Yep.
And then sometime in the 80s, I think it was, there was a fire.
There was
and
a
then,
fire.
right.
This is the
Another
theme
fire.
of the day, I guess.
So then they tore all the buildings down. They built the Rome Restaurant.
And now rest is history.
The rest is history.
Yeah.
Victor
Yeah.
Bazzini had a shoe store on the far left. It was known as the Tip Top Shoe Hospital.
Tip Top Shoe Hospital.
And there it is on the right in there. That was owned by a guy named Ernest Bonifazi.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And Sal Di Lorenzo had the barbershop on the left. Interesting. We have a shoe repair store in North Attleboro, And I went in there the other day, and I kind of knew there was some history there because Victor had told me that Ernest Bonifazi had moved to North Attleboro. I had a sneaky suspicion there was a connection. So I went in, I said to the guy, I says, you know, does the name Ernest Bonifazi ring a bell? He goes, it sure does. There's a picture of him. It was my grandfather.
Really?
Yeah. His grandson is running the shoe shop, the shoe store, and so that was Ernest Bonifazi's grandson.
So it still goes on.
It goes on, and of course Victor took it over in 1950.
Yeah.
And he moved it.
And he moved.
And he moved. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
I
pretty.
love that.
That's pretty cool, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. What was the famous cobbler over there on Cottage Street? Remember, does the name Mr. Falcon ring a bell?
Yeah.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
He was a cobbler. This is looking down Cottage Street just before you make the slight turn to the right where Arteri Funeral Home is.
Okay.
Yeah.
That building's gone now, but we called him Mr. Falcon, but Falcon was his first name. It was Falcon D'Amico, and so he was there for quite a few
That's a
years.
cool first name.
Falcon.
Yeah, Falcon D'Amico.
Yeah. Yeah. No, vaguely. Yeah.
I kind of remember going in there with my father years ago. So, yeah. Now, here's the Morse Opera House block. This is right on downtown, looking down East Central Street. And in 1928, they had a big fire. I'll just quickly show you that. There's the fire. But anyway, to go back to it, you can see the Opera House on the right, and there were different stores in there. One store was owned by Harry Bullocken Sr., and he sold coal and oil from that store and groceries and things. But in 1944, rationing during World War II kind of made it difficult for him, so he decided to stop the food part of it. But his sons, Arthur and Harry Jr., took over the coal and oil part of it, and they continued. And then it became H. Bullock & Sons, and that's when they moved over to the building that we talked about. So then, as I say, in 1928, the block burned down. The building on the right sustained heavy damage, but they were able to salvage it. And again, the top floor is, they didn't replace the top floor. And that building still stands there to this day.
Mm-hmm. Yep, we've got hang tires in there and
That's
the
right.
smoke shop. And
Yep.
Bartlett and Fales, was that on the corner?
That's in fact, Bartlett and Fales was there at the time of the fire.
Oh,
You
they
can
were.
just- yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they were there till 1948. Then it became Cottage Corner, I think it was. And then after that, cleaners went in there, and yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And then
And there's the theater.
there's the theater,
Oh.
the Morse Theater. Now this block, the fire happened in February of 1928. Not even 2 months later, buildings, a business was starting to move into the new block. That's how quickly they rebuilt the block.
Wow.
The theater took a little bit longer. It was about 1928 when they finally reopened or opened it as a theater. And they made a few. What they did is they added safety features into the new theater. The Opera House was a level floor, but this theater was slope floor,
Right.
as typical of all theaters.
Right.
And you can see the marquee. Eventually, a couple of years after this, they added on to that marquee to so that you could. The marquee looked like what we remember.
Right, where you could put the name of the movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Until the late 50s is when the Morse Theater closed for a while. And then in the 60s, Max Scarellico on the block, and he reopened it as the Franklin Cinema. And then they put a whole new marquee on there.
Did that eventually become the Zoetrope?
Exactly.
It did?
Yes,
That's,
it did.
yeah,
I
see?
remember the
Yeah.
Zoetrope.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
okay. All right.
I was sad when it got.
I know, we were all sad. Yeah,
fact,
there
there's-
it is.
there's that marquee.
Yeah, there's the marquee that I remember. Yeah.
And you can see other stores that were in there over the years.
Danello's Market, yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
Danello's Market had moved up from. Danello's Market actually was down on at the intersection of Cottage Street and Union Street, where Liberty Grocery was. In the late 40s, Mr. Genoa and Mr. McGuire took over, and that's Danello's moved downtown. Then in later years, you had Darlene's Donuts was in there.
But over there, that's where Mr. Martin was.
That's
Yeah,
where
that's where you
Danello's
got
is.
your,
That's where Martin's
your
department
white
store.
band pants.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My mom got all her dishes from Morse Theater. She'd go and have a movie, and they'd give a free dish.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh.
Yep, for like, like a penny or something, you go in and get a movie, and then you'd get a saucer or a cup
Yeah.
or a bowl.
Why did they have those there?
That was just the thing that they did.
A
They used to
giveaway.
give dishes,
Oh, okay.
yeah, and they wanted to bring people
Come see
in.
a movie.
So
That's
they knew
right.
that she was going to have to come like 144 times if she wanted like a set
Yeah.
of 12 place setting, right? So you're going to get people to keep coming back into the movie theater, so they give you a dish
Yep.
or a cup.
Cool.
Yeah, it was cool.
There was a bar room in there called the Red Onion. No, the Red Lion. We used to call it the Onion, but it was the Red Lion. And there was a barber shop in there as well. There were different other businesses over the years.
Yeah.
I think there were, Big Ben's sub shop was also in there, I believe. So, yeah. Across the street, remember the Venice Cafe was Guy Vazella ran that. Guy Vazella in 1927 was going to build a theater in that property, and he was just getting ready to start he was in the planning stages of the theater when the Morse Opera House burned down. And then the Morse family decided to build the theater, so at that point, Mr. Vazella said, having two theaters across from each other, it didn't make sense.
Yeah.
So then he built the building that's there today. And a garage next to it, which became Jim Malloy's garage.
Okay.
And that garage is still there to this day.
That's right, but the Venice Cafe was
Right, then they
there.
tore that down in 1968 or so, and then Malloy's expanded the garage to the whole, right to the corner
Right
of
to
Alpine
the corner
Place.
of Alpine, yeah.
Right.
I have his chicken cacciatore recipe, Mr. Vazella, the Venice Cafe. They were
Wow.
famous for their chicken cacciatore.
Well,
I got the secret ingredient.
You know what I would love to get a hold of is the Union Cafe's recipe. You wouldn't happen to know anybody that has that recipe for the sauce?
Oh, I don't. Oh,
Because there's
you
somebody
like
in my
that?
family that wants that
Really?
real bad.
Oh, no, I don't. No, I don't
I
have.
might have it either. It's probably
I love that.
probably patented by now, I think. So, yeah, and one more picture. You remember that place?
Oh, Lola's, yes. We're down now by the Big Y. Now we've moved
know,
down that
okay.
end.
Right
Yep.
across from today's town hall.
Yep, where we were. Yep,
Yeah.
that was the place.
How times have changed.
I know. Lola's Dairy. Did they ever have cows? They had cows, right?
Oh yeah, they sold milk and everything.
Yeah.
I've seen milk bottles with Lola's Dairy on it.
Yeah, see,
so
I
they
remember
really
that.
were a dairy per se.
Yeah. I just remember the great ice cream.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Well, the restaurant was good too. They had the seafood and everything.
Fried seafood, yeah. That was a good place.
But it was disappointing in the winter because they had this big hand-painted sign in the front that said "Closed for the season. See you in April."
Right.
They went. I don't know they went south, but they had a house right next to it, and that's where they lived.
Yeah.
Because we graduated with Betty Lola.
Yep.
She was our classmate, and that was her family that was there.
Yep.
Wow.
So.
Yeah, that's a nice memory too.
Yeah.
Black raspberry ice cream.
I haven't had black raspberry ice cream in
Delicious. Joe, this has been, I love it when Joe comes because I walk down memory lane and look at, you're getting educated. Now you know.
Now I know.
Now you know. J.J. Newberry's.
J.J. Newberry's.
Yes, and what it stood for?
Everything.
John Josiah.
John Josiah.
John Josiah. See, there you go.
I remember too.
Yes.
That's right.
All right. Well, thank you, Joe. Thank you. We'll
you
have to
very
get you
much.
back again.
Okay.
This is so good.
Okay.
And I hope our viewers have enjoyed this because I have. And so I'm still Nan Rafter after all this trip down memory lane.
And I'm Danielle Hopkins. And,
And
until we connect again,
enjoy
enjoy
each
each
day.
This program was made possible by your Franklin friends and neighbors, good folks just like you. Thanks for supporting Franklin TV. And thanks for watching.